Evening, guys, and hot damn, this is a good one because it's a bit of a will he, won't he? So welcome back to the What Life. We're racing. We are doing the Z Monthly. We're a new month. Welcome to November. Where has the year gone? But I feel like November is probably a good marking point for the start of Zwift season, and it's quite telling by the fact that there's 133 people in tonight's pen. I get a good position off the start line, or I got into the pen nice and early, just turned the pedals, nice little warm up. But this race with 133 riders just went out hard, and you can obviously see that. The better the position in the pen, and it's something that I think is really interesting. You know, get a really good position in the pen. You don't have to work quite so hard off the line. So I basically knew that, so I got in there nice and early, and you can kind of see that, like, even though I'm putting some good wattage down, I am just kind of moving backwards through the group, so that just means I don't have to work just as hard. So instead of having to hold an extra 20, 30, 40 watts, it just allows me to still be in the mix. If I'd got late to the pen, if I was like the last person joining, and shout out to Ollie, who I think actually was the last person that joined this race tonight, as he drove home from work to make sure he got on the start line. But if you are at the back of the pen, then you've got no choice. You just got to put the watts down from the start line. And then that just makes it a little bit tougher. So you'll notice that obviously I was at the front, and then now I'm, kind of mid to back of the pack. So, but that's given me a little bit of leeway where I can just be a tiny bit softer with the watts, which I think is incredibly valuable for someone from my position. Talking of my position, let's give you some stats for this evening, because guys, this is a good one. Yes. So, obviously, new race series. We're doing Nyoko Nights. And this is a 2-lap loop, 12 miles, which is just under 20k, 84 meters of elevation, so there's nothing. So that's just like anything that kind of rolls around for the 12 miles or whatsoever, the 20k. Hardly, there's no hills, there's no rollers, there's no nothing. Like, it was all down to people who were wanting to be driving this bus that was going to change the course of the race or push the race. So in terms of other stats for you, I thought this was quite interesting. I dived into Strava because what Strava obviously does, it links through to Zwift, but you get the segments. So I actually have here my wattage for the race. So if you guys have been sticking around for a while, or if you checked out a few of the other videos on the channel, one of the ones I recently did was about overtraining, and I think it's like, I love it. I think it's a really good video because it talks about heart rates and resting heart rates and whether you lose any fitness. And I took 4 complete days off. Now bear in mind, I came back to cycling last week, and my heart rate felt way more comfortable, and my resting heart rate and my working max heart rate have both kind of acted accordingly, given that I've had a few days off. I took 4 days off completely, and what that's done is allowed me to work harder. And actually, having had those 4 days off, this race this evening, I'm 10 watts higher than I've ever held for this distance. So I come out at, let me give you the stat for the race, I think I'm 296 watt average for this ride, which is 10 watts higher, kind of pure watts higher, not normalized. The normalized watts for this race are 296 as well. So I think that's quite impressive, and I think it's definitely another indicator of moving in the right direction. That averages out at 3.8 watts per kg for the race, which again is, that's as high as I've ever put down for a race of like roughly this distance from 18 through to like 22k. So, but the interesting thing, as I was saying, guys, sorry, I ended up losing my train of thought, was on Strava, it obviously does the segments. So for the first lap, double lap loop, we average 289 watts, and that brings us in at a time of 12 minutes 20. And the second lap is an average of 299 watts at a time of 211. So Obviously there's a bit of a lead in as well, which is where the rest of the watts for the average of the 296 or whatever it came out with, which is what makes up the full wattage for the ride. So guys, we're definitely moving in the right direction. These are the little improvements. The thing that I need to work on now, or the thing that I'm going to be working on is things like my 1 minute power, my 5 minute power, and some of those shorter kicks. I feel like I'm getting to the point where my average wattage is high enough, just about, to be able to ride in these like insanely fast big groups. I got a feeling that this might be one of the faster GC races that's out there. I don't really know how, on a course like this where there's no like discernible. Actually, sorry, I don't know why when we go racing, guys, that I feel the need to write things that I find funny in the comments when everyone's hammering it out. And when someone questions whether we should be having a beer stop, and then I just start talking about, I've got some beer in my bidon. Like, I don't know why I find myself this funny, and I do apologize to anyone that's involved with the race. But I will never not take the opportunity to write something stupid in the chat, even though I'm struggling like crazy to hold these big groups. But in terms of progression, in terms of performing, in terms of heart rate, those 4 days have not negatively impacted my performance. In actual fact, the first race coming back off those 4 days, yes, I'll be honest with you, I actually did find it like I was a little bit out of sorts. And I wrote this in a comment to someone, which was basically like, I probably should have done like half an hour where I just kind of tick over. Mark Baker just checking on me, and it turns out that basically coming into this corner, I think Zwift Dynamics almost turns off in some corners, and somehow I got pinged to the front of the group. So someone's like, hey, where's Max? And it just happened to be that I was like right at the front. Not by design, guys. That's never where I would kind of want to be, but I do feel like my positioning on this race is really good, and I really put the effort in on the first lap to make sure that I'm kind of nestled closer to the front, because I knew that as a massive group that's on a dead flat course, it's going to be really hard for the group to break away. I think anyone that was going to want to try and attack or create a little breakaway group were really going to have to try and smash it, and our average wattage felt quite high for Cat B anyway, so I just kind of knew that, in actual fact, give myself some lee room. Every time I worked into the group, I tried to work back through the group and try and get up to the top, so if there were any moves, I had a bit of leeway. So positioning wise, I'm very happy with how this evening went, but a lot of that comes from just having to hold like a higher general wattage to ride in this big group. And I think everyone on Zwift Power comes away kind of like 3.7, 3.8, 3.9 watts per kg, as you'd kind of expect. And then you get a few of the guys that, who kind of push on a little bit. And let me just see what the winner did for the 3.8 for the guy that wins it, 4 for the guy that comes in second, 3.5 for the guy that comes in third. So obviously some guys that have a bit of Zwiftcraft to them. But from a bigger picture, it really feels like taking 4 days of recovery and then kind of get back moving. It's allowed me to, I'm hoping, take that next step. So I talk about it, periodizing training, which is 3-4 weeks where you work really hard, you focus on something, you develop, you build, and then taking 4 or 5 days to effectively, this is a really poor choice of phrase, but like bake in your performance. Let your body recover, let your body grow, like adaptation, allow for adaptation to happen during that period, and then you come back, you start moving again, you get used to moving again, you get the lactate moving again, and then you try and kind of make that next kind of, and step is exactly what it is, because it's not a linear line upwards. You are just literally a little small step, plateau a little bit, little small step, plateau a little bit, and you're going to keep trying to do that as you progress through as an athlete, shall we say. I do appreciate, guys, Ollie once again just checking in on me, and every time people seem to check on me, I don't know how, but I was just kind of drifting towards the front of the group, as a lot of the time when the group would come off the pace, only just slightly, I'd make a bit of a concerted effort to make sure that my positioning wasn't right at the back. Because if there's 100 people maybe still in this peloton, 141 people riding, lo and behold, there could be like 120 people in our front group. If I'm at the very back of that gives me no room whatsoever. So I was always just making sure that I could try and keep my positioning quite far forward, and that would give me that leeway required. But diving back in, so it feels like this is one of the first races where I've held 3.8 watts for the entire race. We come in just over 25 minutes. So it feels like we are progressing and moving in the right direction. This also was like a pretty steady effort. I know that the watts you can kind of see on the bottom. So bear in mind that I have actually manually set my FTP within Zwift at 305. And I have done that because I do try and get 2 to 3 workouts in a week, and then the workouts obviously base their power zones off what you input your FTP. So I've kind of, even though that my, if you have been following along, guys, I've been throwing a different FTP number at you every week based on, like what my 20-minute FTP test said, or my ramp test said, or what Zwift thinks my FTP is. But, there's tons of different numbers, and lo and behold, I've basically just picked one and so far, like, if I set a workout at 305 watts, as the guide for the power zones for that workout, I'm always just about able to finish it. And I just feel like that's kind of super hard, but like it's going to help me progress. And I felt that when it was below that, kind of below the 300s, that I didn't always feel like I was working as hard as I like to work. And, I guess we're all a bit misogynistic about this, guys. We like to suffer, we like the pain. So when it comes to a workout, and some of these workouts are only 45, 50 minutes, so you feel like you can dog those out. But that's what my power zones at the bottom of the screen are now based on, that 305 watt mark, which is my point. So anytime you see it red, that's relative to the 305 that I've inputted as my FTP. So that kind of gives you a guide. So, but it did feel like a bit more of a kind of even effort, even though it does look a little bit spiky. It felt like it was kind of consistent. Obviously, the things that change are your position in the draft, or, well, that's basically it, really. Like, whether the group was moving forward and backwards. I did know, guys, and this is the thing, right, is I'm suffering. Like, I'm working really hard. As I said, I set a 20-minute PR, power curve PR during this race. So, all I can do is ride as hard as I can. I am trying to work on a sprint finish. I'm going to do a video on that another time. I'm trying to work on my sprint, because that 15-second power, that like pure anaerobic effort, and the different energy systems that you use to produce that, I think are now becoming very important to me as a cyclist in order to progress. I feel like I've got to that stage, whereas earlier, I just wasn't bothered about sprinting. It wasn't going to give me the neuromuscular or the aerobic and anaerobic gains that I was actually looking for from a general sense. But I feel like I've got to that stage now where that kind of 15-second power, 60-second power are actually what I have to focus on, which are going to help me develop and get over that, hopefully, kind of 4 watts per kg mark for these 25, 30-minute races, which is the goal, guys. That'd be awesome. That'd be so good. So all I'm doing as we're in this race now, and, it's a funny course because it's dead flat, so I'd be surprised if you are racing this in a big group, whether it breaks up. There's just not really a huge amount of opportunity for it to break up. So, but if you're on a smaller group, I imagine you probably could get a few tearaways. So if you're riding this in a smaller group, 20, 30 riders maybe, just make sure your positioning's good, because if people go and you lose them, there is a chance that they can just kind of keep away from you. It will be hard for them, but I think that would be a good way to ride this if you have the ability to create a split group. Especially if there's 20 people, then it gets split into 10 and 10, right? And you're caught the wrong side of that break. Bridging that as someone that's in the second chase group is going to be super hard. So just be aware of that. But we had so many people in this race. I just knew that my goal was stay with the main group, try and find a position in the draft, and just work hard. And I keep saying to myself, I'm saying to myself now on the bike, if I can make it to 1 mile, so just over 1.5k, if I can make it to the 1 mile mark, guys, I'm going to make the finish. Like, I'm going to make the finish with this group. If I can make it to the 1 mile mark, because I don't have to sprint, I don't have to be part of the sprint. I know that effectively, if I put rather than trying to put 800 watts into, the 12 seconds, the 8 seconds that I have available to sprint, I might be able to do like 450 watts for the 40 seconds or something like that. Basically, my watts for the end of the race, I was never going to be able to peak it super high because I'm absolutely just dying here. But what I could do is just try and nudge them up a little bit, and it was going to keep me with the group. And I get into this 1 mile mark, guys, and we're down into the last mile of this race, and I am still with the group. Bear in mind, I mean, how many riders do you think that is? Like, if you look, 80, there we go. That's crazy that this group is over 80 riders. And I am nestled nicely at the back. So, but I knew that within this last mile, I knew that if I got into it, that I was going to make the finish line with this group, because I was going to do everything. And there's a few guys in here, a few names pop up that I definitely recognize. I think it's Phil Chapman, and I remember you from last race. A few guys I've seen along the way in some races. So I think it kind of blows my mind a little bit that there's 80 people at the, coming down into the last half a mile, 800 meters for the race to go. But obviously, if you keep an eye on the watts, it does start picking up. The guys at the front kick on. I'll add, guys, one thing I haven't actually said is that everyone was given a Tron bike at the start of this race. And this is actually the first time I've ridden on a Tron bike. So, be prepared for that. You don't get any choice in bike, wheels, or whatsoever. Drop the boost just to kind of keep me with the group as it starts moving away. Little eye on the mini map, because I was like, okay, actually my positioning in the group isn't too bad. I see a few guys maybe kind of moving backwards, and that's kind of not me. I'm kind of like in the middle. That's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with this. And I'm just trying to dog it out. My heart rate starts going up, 168, kind of pushing just over 400 watts. Still seated as well, so there we go. There was no way I was going to be able to jump out the saddle for this. As soon as we got down into feet, I was like, guys, I'm going to do this. I'm kind of done it. And then, I don't know, is that it? I feel like I'm finishing with the front group there, guys. So, whoa. I think that's the first time I'm officially going to be like, right, that was a group ride with the front group. 3.8 watts for 20 minutes. And look, here's my power curve. And you can see that I set a couple of like that 297, 296 for that 20-minute mark. So, we're up there. We are making like these improvements, and like, I'm super happy with it, guys. Like, I'm really happy with it. And as much as it sucks whilst doing it, like, I do find this incredibly hard. If I can put another couple of efforts that are kind of 3.8 watts per kg for that 25, 30 minutes, guys, I'm coming for the sprint next time. Right, see you soon.